And were you on
crystal
drugs
meth.
before you joined the military?
Yeah, the drugs were there since 14.
Right.
And at 14, it was experimentation.
Mm,
At 15, I did not recognize it, but it was addiction.
interesting.
And so at 18, going into the military, I brought the addiction with me.
Mm.
And so I could drink a lot and be able to still maintain. And early on, it was not difficult to be able to do it. But as time progresses, the disease catches up with you. And I don't care who you are, it gets all of us.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today, I'm honored and I have the privilege of interviewing Tom LaGrave. Tom is a man who has served his country for 9.5 years as a Navy corpsman and being a SEAL. And he has seen the dark side. And he is certainly, there was a time when it was not so easy to transition back into civilian life. And he made so many interesting experiences, experimented with interesting coping mechanisms similar to me. So when I read his story, I thought, okay, that sounds terribly familiar. So there might be quite a lot of comparisons here. And I can't wait to say hello to Tom. Tom, it is an honor and privilege to have you on my show.
And I appreciate this opportunity. I've been looking forward to this. So let's take it and see where it goes.
My goodness. You became a Navy SEAL and joined the military at the time when the Vietnam War had just settled down. 1975, basically, the Saigon fell in its own right, and you very soon thereafter chose to join an army that was really in, or the Navy in this case, which was really in upheaval. There was a lot of soul searching at that time. What made you to go into the army? What made you to join the forces?
I was living at home and found that I wanted to go out and see the world.
Oh,
And at that time, there was no legitimate way to do it other than to look at becoming in the military.
mm,
And when looked at it, the the individuals that were there, the recruiters, nearly fell off of their seats because at that stage, 1979 was 4 years after Vietnam, and nobody was going in the military. But I saw my way out of the town to see the world that
yeah,
I wanted to
yeah.
become part of.
And you would have been forgiven to think that after the lessons of Vietnam, there will be no more war. But they said the same after the Great War. They said the same after the Second World War. I think we never learn. And just extrapolating now to 2024, the end of it, there are so many hotspots burning up. Yeah, I don't think humanity will ever learn. But coming back to the late 70s with you, here you were. It's intriguing because the SEALs then
Yeah,
were something very, very different than they are
absolutely.
nowadays. This was a hard drinking, hard fighting, hard. Oh boy, when you read the stories of these men, they make your toenails curl. What made you choose the SEALs?
Uh, it was a challenge,
Uh,
and it was at the time, to be perfectly honest, I saw a picture of the obstacle course, and it was a 50-foot rope ladder that had been a Boy Scout, and the Jamborees had the obstacle course, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go and try out that obstacle course without an understanding of what else was there. And once I got there,
yeah.
I was amazed, and then it became a driving force to become.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that is such a beautiful thing for so many young men because it can be a wonderful proving ground. It can be a wonderful way of creating a level of confidence that you would have never otherwise experienced. The
Yeah.
fear inoculation, the constant being uncomfortable, being outside of your comfort zone, that creates a very special human being. And I think that is I think the very positive side that can come out of such a training, of such a exposure, isn't it? Did you feel like that? What kind of personality did you become when you
So
joined the
it's
SEALs?
really important to understand that all Navy SEALs go through what's called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL
Hmm.
training. We have a class. My class was 106. Today, I think they're up to 380.
Yeah.
But the point being is what it what makes us all the same is that training. And then if you were to even parse it farther down, it all depends on what the instructors are like.
Hmm.
I went in at a time where all the instructors were Vietnam era veterans, and they imprinted on me their way of operating. Where today, folks, youngsters that are going through training at this time, all the instructors are here from Afghanistan
Hmm.
or Iraq, and that personality is what you want to emulate because when you're going through training, what you
Hmm.
want to do is be like them. And
Hmm.
so my line went with a Vietnam era veteran who was angry at society, who was disrespected by
Hmm.
their brothers and sisters of that generation.
Hmm.
And the way they taught us was you do not draw any praise to yourself. We know what it is that you do. You don't need to tell anyone. You do not need to speak to anyone about what we do. And that is what created me today and what makes it different as each generation is taught by their instructor corps.
Hmm. That's a really, really good point you're making there, because these are such impressive figures. These are larger than life men that you're exposed to. And of course, they leave an everlasting impression there. For me, it is so intriguing to see you coming to this advanced level of training, to this advanced exploration of the boundaries within yourself. You find strengths that you had no idea that they are there. And when you think that absolutely you could not even do one more little bit more, you're only at 40% of what you can really achieve. These are sort of
Yes.
the typical statistics that are said. In reality, now you have got men and women who are trained to that level.
Yes.
Yet, when it then comes down the line, when men and women, and as I shouldn't say women, there are no female Navy SEALs, but let's
Not
say,
yet.
yeah, exactly, exactly. We don't know where this goes. There, it is a problem that if you end up on the wrong side of a machine gun,
Yeah.
that suddenly all that personality, that 100%, that 110% of training, all that is taken away.
Yeah.
All that suddenly, or when you come to the end of your service, for reasons whatsoever, you decide to get back into Civvy Street, suddenly all that is gone.
Yeah.
And despite all this training, there is suddenly this void, this emptiness, this confusion, this lack of adaptation, this meaningless new life. And suddenly there's the temptation of drugs, of alcohol, etc. It is so intriguing for me that even if we train ourselves to such a high level, that
Yeah.
on the flip side, if you take that all away, you're just the same in the same boat as, let's say, a 40-year-old who or 50-year-old like me who has gone now through a divorce, has lost his job, and you're suddenly there's no more purpose there. And to a certain degree, I mean that this story sounds rather familiar to you as well, isn't it?
Yeah. The fact of the matter is, with the discharge came a feeling of betraying sacred trust. I could not forgive myself for being what was at the time someone that was dangerous to my compadres, the individuals that I was operating with. Because of my addiction, I was in no shape to be able to operate. And what they did was uh, they took what I could not do in leaving the military. They discharged me for drug use. And it was at the time devastating. And that piece is what began a process of moving forward to what's sitting here today. It has to be understood that what I did was what you're not allowed to do, and that is to use drugs, discharged, and then having nowhere to go, no one to be with, no one that understood, and finding at that moment a recovery facility, and then working with youth that gave me the ability to begin again to stand up and pursue life as I had once done, but in a different environment.
Oh, beautiful. And I
Yeah.
think that is the post-traumatic growth that is there waiting for us to reap the rewards, because
Yeah.
many of us go through so much trauma. And there is the temptation, of course, to escape your reality. So it's intriguing. So I think we need to go back to the young Tom who
Yeah.
was there, who was going from Boy Scouts to the real playground, who
Yeah.
is going up that 50 feet ladder,
Cargo net.
and and then some. Um, it's interesting to see, because at that time there was still a very wet environment, if I may say so, in the Navy SEALs, at least from a reputation. Of course, I'm not a SEAL, so I can only say from the many witnesses, the books that I've read, etc. There was still a heavy drinking culture within the
Yeah.
SEALs, was it not?
Yeah.
And it would have been late 80s, 90s that was finally a bit tidied up. So, what made you different to your brothers who were just as
Well,
much drinking?
here's the thing is at the end, the morale in the military at that time was not good.
Mm,
And being set in that environment, when I went into the military under the Carter administration,
mm,
and in within a year, it became the Reagan administration, and the Reagan administration took a zero tolerance to drug use,
mm,
and the drinking is acceptable socially. If I would have been just that, I would have never gotten in trouble.
mm.
But I did not just drink. I also partook in all the rest of the things that fall into the domain of drugs. And because of that, that was the taboo. No,
Mm.
it's not acceptable.
Okay.
And it began right then, 1980, Reagan administration, the Forrestal accident, aircraft carrier, and zero tolerance became the the way of the
Mm,
new military.
mm. And I
Yeah.
guess to a certain degree, there needed to be a clean up. There
Yes.
was I still get confused when I read statistics, because one statistic says, nah, there were just a few people who were on heroin coming back from Vietnam, and others say, bullshit, this was 200,000 that came back on heroin.
Yeah.
Um, so it is, I think, depends upon how the flag changes in the wind, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
what was the temptation with the drugs with you, and what was your preferred choice? What was going? And were you on
Crystal
drugs
meth.
before you joined the military?
Yeah. They the drugs were there since 14.
Right.
And at 14, it was experimentation.
Mm,
At 15, I did not recognize it, but it was addiction.
interesting.
And so at 18, going into the military, I brought the addiction with me.
Mm,
And so I could drink a lot and be able to still maintain. And early on, it was not difficult to be able to do it. But as time progresses, the disease catches up with you. And I don't care who you are, it gets all of us.
Mm.
And it was that piece that I brought with me into the military
Mm.
and was not able to stop because of an addiction. And in the ninth year, 6th month, I paid the ultimate price by
Mm.
being discharged for drug use.
Mm. Having said that, I mean, you live in such close proximity with your brothers. They
Yeah.
must have known, and they must
No,
have prop.
here's the
Or
thing
were
is,
you such a good master in hiding?
no, it was, at the end, I was asked, who else was I doing it with? And it's like, no one. I'm not, come on. That's not just, that's friendship.
Mm.
You're not going to turn in your brothers.
Of course, I hear
So
you.
the answer was everyone's doing it, but I got caught. And when I got asked, I was the only one.
Mm. But we are not talking about Ranger candy, i.e., ibuprofen and Voltaren and things like that.
Uh,
We are talking.
Drug of
Uh,
choice. Drug of choice was crystal meth, marijuana, Jack Daniels, Budweiser's,
mhm.
and I liked Skull Long Cut Wintergreen.
Well, in all fairness, there is a long history of that. I think half of the Wehrmacht was blitzed
Yeah,
on speed, which were
yeah,
amphetamines. So I think you're not the first soldier who falls into that kind of thing. Having said that, I think amphetamines you can sort of control, as in those amphetamines that were used for I want to say doping, which is the wrong word, to uh, keep going for unnaturally long lengths. Let's say the fighter pilots, etc. At that time, whilst crystal meth, you have no idea what strength you get, what kind of shit you get. So, what was it like to do an exercise on crystal meth?
um, you look at the dynamic of crystal meth. It's speed. Everything is fast,
Mm,
and I lived life on the edge,
mm, mm,
so that it wasn't enough that I jump out of an airplane at 10,000 feet and end up a mile and a half behind lines where I'm not supposed to be. And that was the thrill.
mm,
It was because I could.
mm,
And it was, in the end, my downfall.
mm,
But
mm,
what was it about? It was I wanted to live on the very edge
mm,
and know what life was like there,
mm,
knowing that I could handle whatever came at that pace.
mm,
And it was wonderful for a period of time,
mm,
but in the end, it was not anything that I
mm.
can say was enjoyable
Mm.
or the ability to maintain.
No,
None
exactly.
of that was there.
Exactly. Well, military is not really known to appreciate a good sleep schedule and make sure that you're always hydrated and that you're well fed with good nutritional things. Yeah, I don't think so. And if you then mix in drugs and you're heading for burnout before you can blink.
Exactly.
Oh, man. But then again, 9 years within the SEALs, that is that is a long time. That is a
Yeah.
long time, and I think the SEALs, like all Tier One special forces, there is a constant evaluation of your abilities, and if you're not cutting it, you are going. I
Yeah.
think that's fair
Just
to
like
say, and
that.
it was the same then, wasn't it?
Yes,
So,
absolutely. And they weren't looking for it, but your actions betrayed you.
yeah.
And you became a known quantity in the incorrect way.
Okay. Interesting. When did you think, with hindsight, that became apparent to your brothers?
um, after the first enlistment into the second enlistment.
Mm,
So 79 to 83,
mm. Okay.
84 was no problem.
Yeah.
85, 86, we got issues. 87,
Mm.
it's apparent.
Right.
And 88, it's game over.
Right. The reason I'm asking that is I had a mentor, the first mentor that I had when I was in rehab. He was a financial businessman. And he told me the story that he always thought he was hiding it so well.
Yeah.
No one knew that he was constantly drunk, etc. And only then, when he got sober, he asked his business relations, did you actually know that I was drinking? They said, of course we did. And he
Yeah.
said, well, why did you not just dump me? And he said, you had such ironclad contracts, we couldn't get out. But they all knew because there is this kind of denial within all of us, everyone who has got this addictive behavior, these addictive traits. We think, oh no, we are so good. No one knows. No one could possibly firstly know that I'm drinking, I'm hiding it so well, or using for that matter. And then the other thing as well, no one could possibly know how I feel, how bad I feel, etc. There's always a reason that we
Yeah.
drink or use, etc. So with you, you started at age 14.
Yeah.
And for me, it only came later, age 18. But I was sort of dealing with sort of the trauma of early teenage years and probably abandonment kind of stuff from younger, which I nowadays say, well, okay, that's probably a pretty good reason for me to have been set up to find alcohol really attractive. Have you figured out what made you a sitting duck for it?
You know what? Yeah, the biology,
Right,
it's in the family.
right.
And it became apparent uh, today, everybody's in recovery, the entire family,
Oh, wow.
and have been for a long time. And it was, childhood was okay. I don't remember it being a negative.
Hmm,
And then when I started working with youth, it was because I could not feel. Um, I was 29, discharged, drug use. I had been trained to shut down emotions. I was also using the kind of drugs that shut down emotions.
hmm.
And so there was no feeling. And my first job I took was working with an adolescent at a recovery facility. And I didn't go there to help kids. I went there for them to help me because I was able to watch and see what was going on with them. And then it became apparent to me what the issues could be.
Yeah,
And that was just,
yeah.
for so many, the self esteem is critical.
Oh, shit, yeah.
I was a Navy SEAL with very low self esteem.
Hmm,
It, I presented as knowing it all. I was able to put that front up. But the fact of the matter is,
yeah.
it was not true.
Well, is
So,
that so? How intriguing is that? Because that is your perception.
yeah,
I always say you can't bullshit a bullshitter. Okay, so yes,
exactly.
we too are bullshitters of the highest degree. No two ways around that.
There you
Uh,
go.
but at the same token, do you, when you say low self-esteem, do you really think that is true? Or what I'm really trying to ask is that not a lie that you tell yourself? That you're saying you're a failure? That you focus on those things that are negative, when in reality you probably achieved shitloads. The sheer fact
Yeah,
that you stayed in the SEALs for 5 years in good grace and then unfortunately things caught up with you, that is a huge achievement. I mean,
yeah.
what's the failure rate of a butts class? Huge.
75%.
Well, my point, but you
Yeah.
made it despite your use of drugs. Man, come on. That is, give
Okay.
yourself some credit.
Yeah, but here's the piece that you got to understand as human beings, we all are. We all have physical, mental, emotional, spiritual,
Mm.
and all those domains require that
Mm.
we are acknowledged. From
Absolutely.
the physical, I did not have low self-esteem, but from the emotional, I was retarded. And
Agreed.
that today was what the gift of youth giving me
Yeah.
was to find spirituality
Yeah.
in the form of being able to be at peace with my emotions,
Yeah.
making me a good man, an honorable man. And
Oh, I love
it
it.
just it that piece was not there.
Mm.
And the whole was low self-esteem,
Mm.
even though the physical was, high.
I know. So
So
agree with you. Oh, so agree. The emotionally retarded. I love it. I used the same word when I was on a guest on a show, and the show host, she cringed. You can't say retarded.
yeah,
And in reality, it is actually the best description of how I felt, and I love to hear that you are the
yeah,
same honest man when we reflect back on our emotional intelligence at that time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because you got to be honest. To
Mm.
thine own self be true.
So true. So true. I mean, here you were then what, 29 when
Yeah,
you got discharged,
yeah.
and you were still on this cocktail of drugs, I assume. Uh,
No,
no?
discharged at 29, and 4 months after discharge, I went into a recovery facility.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And that was for 90 days. And what that taught me was how to physically break the cycle, but emotionally and how to live life,
Hmm.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Please get in touch when you know who you want to be when you grow up.
Thank
I
you.
haven't figured that out.
But
I
it's a
think,
wonderful journey
yeah.
seeking it today.
Yeah. I mean, to a certain degree, you could actually say that this was a blessing for you because there were
Yeah,
90 days where
yeah,
you had a structured program that guided you back into
yeah,
civilian life. Many soldiers don't have that. They are one day getting shot at in Iraq or wherever they happen to be stationed, and 72 hours later, they're supposed to be mowing the lawns and having a good time with the barbecue and with some PTA. And you think, oh my God, how the hell do you do that? It is, at least there you had a bit of a breaking in, and that was certainly not normal. It's not even normal nowadays. It's probably getting better in nowadays military, but certainly not in those times. Yeah, your discharge papers now, fuck off. Um, was
yeah.
that not your experience?
Well, here's the thing is I got a reprieve, not a reprieve, but one of the jobs that I ended up doing was called an MFLAC. That's Military Family Life Consultant. So I was a DoD contractor from 2009 to 2016, where I actually worked with active duty military, wherever the bases were, I was sent there. And it turns out that my boss found out about my military background. So I was allocated to Special Operations Command, where I worked with all the military special forces. And
Nice.
I was able to see this generation in how they were experiencing what I had experienced, but it was different.
Mhm.
Even though there was a stigma was stopped, they were trying to address it. That stigma is still there and it's still powerful. But I was able
What
to come to
stigma?
the stigma is you don't want to come and talk to a therapist.
Oh, I see what you mean. Of course,
Yeah.
because the moment you expose yourself to a therapist, you think your career's over. That means
And
I mean, oh,
it was that job that allowed me to better understand myself
yeah,
because I saw it being redone, the circle coming around
sure,
again.
sure.
And so, in the end, what's the answer? You know what? I got ideas, but I'm not sure. I think that there are ways we can look at it, but as it stands today in our society, it's not a priority. So,
That's a hard one to answer and a hard one
Yeah,
to deal with, isn't it? A priority. If you, as a country, as a society, send soldiers to war and then
yep,
expect them, you turn them literally into highly advanced killing machines, and
yep,
then expect them to come back and are absolute normal members of society, you've got to be joking. So
right.
therefore, you're training this pit bull, and then you're saying, but now don't you dare bite anyone at home. Huh?
Not
So I think
reality.
you know, but then again, only 1% of the American populations are joining the army. Is that figure about right?
Yep, but 22 um, veterans a day are committing suicide.
Exactly. Exactly right. So that figure,
So
it's
what
true.
statistic are you looking at?
Exactly. Exactly. No, I 100% agree. But I think it is so important to recognize that, but to recognize it also as a problem within the society. Because what is happening here? Why do we have this great level of despair in this subgroup of society? When you actually think about it, the VA is trying to lead to a better transition into civilian life and try to put support in place. Why do we still such a figure? Have you figured that out?
Well, here's the thing is you like history, and I can appreciate that. 1974 was Nixon. Nixon came up with the war on drugs.
Hmm.
And in 74, if you look at the budget, it was split in half. Half the budget went to law enforcement, the other half went to recovery.
Ah,
Today, it's 98% with the law enforcement,
yeah.
and it's where's the recovery facilities?
Hmm.
Because in the recovery facilities, you get to see how therapy can be done in a legitimate way
Hmm.
that doesn't make you less than, but
Hmm.
actually gives you the tools to become more than.
Exactly.
And we don't have those domains.
Hmm.
Where are our recovery facilities
Hmm.
for a problem that is devastating?
Hmm. And we've got two things here. I think on the one hand, you've got, of course, the tendency to escape reality, to numb your feelings, to numb your experiences with alcohol and drugs, or gambling, or crazy
Sex
sex
and
with everything
everything.
that moves, with very dangerous outdoor activities. People living on the edge, and they continue to live on the edge. So, on the one hand, you have got that kind of behavioral issue. On the other hand, you have got the trauma, the underlying trauma, and
Yes.
the incidence of PTSD in soldiers who were exposed to the various wars or the various operations, enduring freedom, whatever you call it at, they're still quite significant. What we haven't discussed at all is the TBIs, the traumatic brain injuries,
Yeah.
that so many soldiers have. So you have got a multifaceted thing. So it's not just drugs. I just don't
Nope.
use it. Bullshit.
Nope.
Nancy Reagan, go home.
Yeah.
So
Just say no.
that's exactly it. Yeah, right. That doesn't work. But what are we doing with the underlying treatment? So if we want to tease it apart, if we say, okay, we have got a problem with alcohol, and law enforcement is not the answer, and we don't have the the drug rehabilitation facilities, maybe
Right.
the only way
Right.
that we can start is looking at the PTSD, at the TBI, at those kind of things. Have you felt that in recent years there has been more progress there? Is there hope there for veterans that we treat the underlying reasons why we drink, why we use?
The VA is really good at trying to address the issue. The problem is that it's not being understood by the veteran in how best to utilize what is being offered.
Huh.
Because when you're dealing with those kinds of traumas, you're absolutely feeling isolated and alone, and you're not reaching out because you don't want to appear weak.
Yeah.
And so you're living in this
Yeah.
haze, this fog. And even though there are opportunities, we're still not making the connection.
Yeah. And for crying out loud, we have not even touched upon the kind of shame that is associated with you being such a type A personality,
Yep.
such a, leader, the man, the real macho man. I mean, how more manly can you get than a SEAL or a special operator?
Yeah.
And then to actually have to deal with the flow-on effects of a brain injury, the flow-on effects of exposure to often multiple incidents that even each one taken alone would scramble your head, both emotionally as well as in real life. And here you are. Ah, goodness. It
So
is so
you want to go off on a tangent here? Uh,
anytime.
there is now on the horizon, they are testing psilocybin,
Exactly.
MDMA,
Yeah.
ketamine.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I can't risk my license, but I am also a member of MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic,
Mm.
whatever S. And I'm reading on all the material. And the fact of the matter is,
Yeah.
if we go back to the 60s, magic mushrooms, it was there and it
Yeah.
was a phenomenal
Yeah.
way of addressing so many mental health issues. But you got big pharma who wants you to, take my pills for the rest of your life
Mm.
instead of giving you a pill that stops the ailment and lets you move on with your
Mm.
life.
You're
It,
correct. Yeah.
way too complex now.
Mm.
All that it is I want to say that to the veterans that follow that line because
Mm.
there's something legitimate there.
Yeah.
I just
And
can't be a practitioner of it.
absolutely. And I think that is a very important point. I mean, we just had that FDA ruling,
Yeah,
which was actually against MDMA use. Having said that,
horrible.
I just learned
Horrible.
though that they did not say you have to stop any studies. They were actually realizing, hang on, that there is actually something behind it. Because
Yeah.
they didn't want to be seen as of really pushing it out there. But they said
Somebody
do more
messed with the
studies.
statistic on the
Yeah.
that was terrible from a professional standpoint.
I hear you. I hear you because there are so many case studies now, so
Yep.
many really beautiful changes. And I had some guests on my show who actually had journeys into a spiritual realm
Yeah.
facilitated by a number of drugs. And their healing, they described it as sort of healing on steroids. They had done basically in one or two sessions in a certain facilitated in a certain setting. It was wonderful for them. Now, when I say that, they didn't go onto some kind of new age hippie farm and just had, oh yeah, let me have a little bit of a sip of that. But they actually went for a week to a resort, which was medically managed, where there was indeed a clear dosing regime used and the whole setting and the whole psychological support, etc. So it was a properly conducted treatment session.
There you go.
And that that is, I think, something that hopefully we see far more common in the future.
Yeah.
And there
Because
are certainly ways around it to address the underlying problems in a far more efficient way. And then when you actually deal with the problems, then you do no longer need to rely on ways to escape your reality.
what we're talking about here is spirituality. It's not religion.
Oh yeah.
And this goes back into the eons, millennia
Mm,
ago,
mm,
where they had, what was it, ibogaine and ayahuasca.
mm.
This was done where it was in a setting that was a transition for folks, especially young people, when
Yeah,
they were going from adolescence to adulthood.
Yeah.
where all of that is ancient,
Mm.
viable,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
no longer here.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
I 100% agree with you. That's right. We've lost a lot in from the past. A lot of stuff had to go because there were many beliefs in the past that are probably not so conducive for a good life nowadays when you look at it. So there was a lot of bullshit that our ancestors did, but there were also some really good things that were there. And I think a whole way of a society integrating that the way that the community worked together, all that is lost nowadays. The way
Right.
that either a shamanic religion or a more common religion was actually utilized to bind people together, to communicate, to create something that is bigger than one person.
Yes.
These things are gone. So no surprise that there is a bit of a void there that is then being filled by some nut jobs
Yeah.
of whatever kind of conviction. My goodness, but I mean, you were exposed at an early stage to young people. And I would have thought that actually that must be the hardest group to work with because they are not only emotionally insecure. I mean, tell me any teenager who has got his shit together, no way in hell. And now we're mixing drugs in there. This would have been the hardest thing to work with. How did, and you kept going with that. So,
I did
how?
an adolescent recovery facility for 4 years, and then I ran a Boys and Girls Club for 4 years. And after doing that, I learned that I had a talent and an ability, and I had also dedicated
Hmm,
due to, finding purpose and meaning,
hmm,
having left the SEAL to become uh, a guide, teacher, mentor
hmm,
to young people where we don't leave. Today, we leave them in adolescence and tell them, go figure it out, become an adult.
yeah, okay.
Why we have what we have
Hmm,
today. Our youth with our being overwhelmed with anxiety, depression, they're
hmm,
turning to drugs and alcohol,
hmm,
suicide.
yeah.
And it's terrible because what we're looking at from my experience, the adult population will not come to terms with our reality. We will compromise. We will not give ground. We are angry. We are
Hmm,
fearful,
hmm,
and our kids. This generation of kid is more intuitive than any generation that's come
hmm,
before them,
hmm,
and they don't want to hear what we're telling them. They want to watch us and see what we do. And in that, they will choose to emulate. But they're
hmm.
looking at a bunch of knuckleheads who won't come to terms with dealing with the reality. So
Yeah, well, the divided states of America are the
it's here.
perfect
It's
example here.
here.
Yeah, it's true. Um, Having said that, I mean, it's intriguing for me to think about my own young men, 22, 23. I've tried to push as much history into them as humanly possible. And of course, they don't want to know anything from that. But I hope I've planted enough seeds that some of them will grow and some of them will hopefully make them wonder, hey, what they are telling me, is that really true? And why are they telling me that? If we start with that, with the mainstream media and with everything else that you see, that's probably a really good starting point. A positive skepticism. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
Expect that they bullshit you, but make it a game to pick that up, and I think that would be a good start. I mean, we have got a completely changing picture in recent years
Yeah.
because once upon a time in the 70s, There was wheat and okay, there was heroin, there was all crystal meth came. Then we had around the north, we had the oxycodone epidemic coming through. But then 2014, life changed, and we had suddenly China flooding through the Mexican cartels, flooding the states with fentanyl and carfentanil and whatever analogs of fentanyl there are, or whatever the newest shit is that a chemist can cook up in some Chinese laboratory. This has become really one of the key things at the moment with 100,000 deaths, 120,000 deaths, I think you guys had last year
Right.
from those kind of things. That will only get worse. You have
No doubt.
got you've got a huge influx in the south from all kind of people, many of them good people who just try to escape a really nasty South America, and some people who are probably terrorists, and some people who are cartel members and have got all kind of goodies in their bags that they want to sell on the market. Where are you based? And what have you seen happening in recent months and years? Are we
Here,
just fighting like Don Quixote against windmills and we will never win because it's such a chaotic system?
no, here's the thing is my mother's an immigrant. So I, this is the way I look at it. In California, Oregon, and Washington is the Pacific Crest Trail. I would ask any American to start in just our side of the border and walk the Pacific Crest Trail to Washington and understand that these immigrants that are coming to our country,
Mm.
the horror that they experience as they're coming, it's so unfair. And where I sit and see it today is that we're creating boogeymen
Mm.
because
Mm. Okay.
it's we need that, because if the boogeyman isn't there, then you see there's viable answers. We can bring in large numbers of immigrants and make them into citizens
Yeah.
where they pay taxes, and
Yeah.
our social security
Yeah.
is directly correlated to that. And that, don't get me started on that one. The fact of the
It's
matter
beautiful.
is,
Tom, it's beautiful to hear that because my grandparents equally were actually in Czechoslovakia, and if I go further back, they were in sort of more the eastern parts of Europe, and they fled communism, they fled
yeah,
things. They were just as much refugees at the time after the Second World War and in between the wars.
yeah,
So yes, this is actually we saw that so much. I mean, Europe was burning for a good 100 years, 1870 pretty much, and then it really started 1914. But all that, there were so many shifts of people. It was nearly normal to have a kind of refugee or migrant status at one stage in your family. But we have
yeah,
forgotten that. And
exactly. And the part with not remembering is making us into um, cruel is a pretty harsh word,
mm,
but we're
mm,
not being empathic.
mm,
We're not being, where is our empathy
mm,
to the
mm,
hardship of, what these folks are dealing with in there?
mm,
My grandparents, my mother, especially my grandparents, they loved this country. They embraced this country, but they both missed the old country. Nobody wants to come to another country if your country
mm,
is sustaining you.
yeah.
And that's such a sad statement
Mm,
that we
mm,
we are not concerning ourselves with the, well, here's the thing is the money is always a key element.
mm,
We're not looking at having the right amounts for various countries and nations to make the money for their people.
Hmm.
And we are looking at where we're sitting thinking that we have a right to this. We have a right. And
Hmm.
the fact of the matter is, no, we don't. And if we're not careful,
Yeah.
what we have that we cherish,
Yeah.
we can lose. And that's a concern
Hmm.
for me and an underlying issue for many, many more. And I think
Hmm.
in the very near future, we're all going to come to understand a darkness that is going to come and we're all going
Hmm.
to experience again because we don't learn the
Hmm.
lessons.
I think there's a very high likelihood of that. I agree completely with you. And I actually love to hear your passion about that and this reality check. I love that. Still, you have got, I guess, a leaking border. And whilst there are many, many, many good people are coming in there who's trying their best to assimilate and to create a new America and create for them a new life. There is also, with a leaky border, you've got also an influx of drugs that are so much easier concealed because of the high potency of fentanyl, carfentanil. You don't need to bring a shipment of a huge truck in there. You bring in a kilogram or 2 kilogram of material in that is easily hidden, and that is so potent and so such a killer. So I was referring to that problem of the border, of it becoming very easy for the cartels to bring in drugs and for China to essentially create a chemical warfare against the United States. It's actually very nice to do. Thank you very much. Doesn't take much.
Here's the thing. The border isn't, the border is secure. 2 years ago, we could have realigned all of this because all the politicians wanted to address the immigration.
Yeah.
And it was set to happen, except for President Trump, that was at that time, the former president said, don't touch that. I need that as my way into attaining, once again, the presidency. That this could have been answered 2 years ago, but today it's going to be addressed in a way that is un-American.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. Oh, that is, we could do a whole interview now on that in its own right. But here we are. How beautiful is it to be open and to be honest and respectfully exchanging ideas and accepting the position of the other person
Yeah.
and trying to understand where they're coming from. Because it's that sitting around the table, sharing some food, sharing coffee, and just actually exchanging ideas where you see the many commonalities that we all have and that can bring us forward as a society, but also which make us grow. The moment we all like a good love, we all like good food. So therefore, if we can actually share that and bring in the connection again, even talking about difficult subjects, because that was the role of the dinner table in a good functioning family where you can talk about those things. Is that
Can I
connection
clarify for a
not the
second?
opposite to addiction?
Yeah,
Is
can I
that
clarify
not?
for a second?
Hmm?
This is the clarification that I wrote a book. That's what I'm doing here. And I wrote it because of the youth that I feel have given me the life I now have.
Hmm.
It is my purpose is to bring them into an understanding. The politics of the adult population is, I've been a social worker for the last 35 years. I've looked at addiction, I've looked at homelessness, I've looked at all the issues that we're dealing with here.
mm,
And we are not looking to fix any of that. And by not doing that, it's causing our youth to come to deal with
mm,
unacceptable
mm,
demands on them in the form of anxieties and depressions.
mm,
And they are my key purpose. They
mm,
are the one that bring me meaning.
mm,
If, as I said, written in this book, I've addressed those issues. As a social worker, I've said, this is what I saw, this is what I suggest, this
mm,
is what can be done.
mm,
But knowing full well, no one's going to do anything right now. That
mm,
my place is with our youth, and
mm,
I want them to know that I will never judge them, that I will never
mm,
abandon them, I will never leave them, and they are the core
mm,
purpose of my being. And I want to be able, on behalf of them, speak to the adult population who
mm.
I'm not coming from what I want or what I get. I'm bringing what they've shared with me and told me that they need and are not receiving. And so I will address it to the
Mm.
public. And all that we talked about of immigrations and
Mm.
all the politics and all the religion,
Yeah.
I'm not here to address that. I'm here because of our youth. And I also look at things and see things. And if you really want to have a conversation, I'm open.
Your book, where can people get it? What is its name? Show us.
Here you go.
Special welfare
Social
versus,
warfare.
well, oh,
It's
nice one.
adolescent to adulthood,
Yeah.
a guidebook. This right here, I spent the last 20 years putting together a program
Yeah.
for youth. And it's a very
Beautiful.
specific age. It's 18, 19, 20-year olds,
Yeah.
not 17, not 21. My SEAL experience gave me a rite of passage. I also got that rite of passage by
Mm.
going into the military, and I got a rite of passage from doing the Boy Scouts. And that rite of passage doesn't exist anymore.
Mm.
So I have a nonprofit called Honor Bound Academy, and on its website, and you can get there by going to thehonorboundacademy.org. One more time, thehonorboundacademy.org. All that I am, all that I'm talking on, all that I believe, and the purpose I'm trying to serve is there. You'll also find all the other platforms that
Mm.
you can go to from that site. And you can go on to it to get to the book,
Mm.
or you can go on to Amazon. But here's the key thing. I believe that we're coming into dark times,
Mm.
but I believe with the youth, we can address issues that we still have hope.
Mm.
And that's the message I want to leave to the youth. The adult population, I'm not sure. And thank you for letting me have that moment.
Mm. Oh, absolutely. It is beautiful because you have got quite a unique experience
Yeah.
and you are speaking so highly of nowadays youth when really many other men and women of our generation are looking down on the following generations more as, you know, wet towels, as whatever description you use. It is intriguing to see, to hear your message, and I'm probably grateful to hear that. But it also reminds me, and when you think about the the voices from Israel after last October's attacks, that how a whole society came together to fight. And you hear many men of our age again thought that it would have never, they would have never thought that possible, that the generation that they were looking down upon, came to arms and started really be oh, I get goosebumps just thinking of I'm trying to
Yeah,
recall the words that I heard from Jewish, from Israeli men who actually spoke with such admiration of the youth. I
yeah,
think that is a beautiful thing when you actually see, no, there is so much more to it. It's not as black and white that we think, yeah, we were the hard men, look at us, and these softlings down there. No, in reality, it's the youth that will hopefully create our future. But we need to guide them because they are the
that's the
experiences
key.
that they haven't yet made, and you
That's
have
the key.
lived those experiences, the good
Yeah,
ones, the bad ones, warts and all. And I think that's where communications like ours today are so important because we are honest, we are authentic, we are
yeah.
transparent, qualities that are actually qualities of a good leader, and
And,
that
and
is what we
this
do.
is where, you know, you got to draw the line and speak truth to
Mm,
power. I am looking at a generation of youth that I do not have good feelings for,
mm,
that I believe has the potential. And if we're not willing to make the sacrifice,
mm.
then we're all going to be in a bad place and nobody's going to like where we end up. And
Touche.
it's the worst part is we will look behind and look back and see we could have done something, but we didn't.
That's true.
Yeah.
Tom, you're an amazing man, and it was wonderful to talk to you. You had a lot of insights that surprised me with hindsight. So I've learned a lot, and you certainly gave me a different point of view in quite a number of things. So for that, I'm incredibly grateful. Have you figured out who do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a friend.
Oh, beautiful. Excellent. Excellent. Because we
That's
are
as
all,
simple as I can make it.
yeah, we are all here because we've got choices. We have the privilege of choice every second. And the past does not equal the future. We can change. We
Yeah.
can look
Yes.
at life in a different way. And we can challenge ourselves. Is the darkness that we are feeling, is that really true? Or is that actually a heap of bullshit? Is the story that we're telling us really true? Or is it just a conglomerate of lies and misperceptions and old coping mechanisms that no longer serve us? And I think that is our privilege, our choice, but also our duty to stop for a moment, think, and live our life to the fullest. And you helped me today to do that. So for that, I'm incredibly grateful. Tom, you're a great man.
And grateful to you for the opportunity to be able to speak
Mm,
to your audience, to
mm,
you. Thank you very much for that opportunity. And
absolutely.
I appreciate it and look forward to the future.
Well, exactly. Let's co-create. Let's see what else we can do together. And
I'm all in.
and you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.